All right, so you ready to dive into this whole not giving effect thing?
Let's do it. Should be interesting.
Right. This book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving Effect, it's like everyone and their mother's talking about it. But is it all hype?
Well, Mark Manson, the guy who wrote it, he definitely doesn't pull any punches, gets right to the point.
Yeah, no kidding. He kicks things off with this poet, Charles Bukowski, right?
Mm.
And Bukowski was, well, kind of notorious for being a bit of a, shall we say, character.
Yeah. And you know what he had on his tombstone? Don't try. How's that for a life motto?
Talk about counterintuitive.
Mm.
I mean, isn't the whole point to try to strive for something better?
That's exactly what Manson challenges. Like, maybe we're so caught up in this chase for success, whatever that even means, that we've forgotten how to just be, just be ourselves, flaws and all.
It's like he's giving us permission to just chill out a bit.
Yeah.
Which honestly can be kind of a scary thought.
For sure. And it's funny because he takes this whole idea even further with what he calls the backwards law.
The backwards.
Whoa.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So basically, he's saying that the more we fixate on being happy, like the more we make it our goal, the harder it becomes to actually achieve it.
Wait, so you're telling me chasing happiness is pointless?
It's more like the harder you chase, the further it runs away. He
Yeah.
actually uses this analogy of a prince who thinks that suffering is the path to enlightenment. So the prince, he puts himself through all this pain and hardship, thinking it'll lead him to some higher state of being.
And does it work?
Not so much. Turns out suffering just, well, it sucks. And the prince finally reaches enlightenment when he realizes he has a choice.
A choice about what?
About what he gives a feck about. It's about deciding what really matters to you, what values you're going to base your life on, and then having the guts to actually live by them.
Okay, so not giving effect doesn't mean becoming some emotionless robot.
Not at all. It's about being selective with your energy. Like, is that annoying coworker or that snarky comment on social media really worth your time and mental energy? Probably not.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Definitely. But that's where choosing your values comes in.
Okay, so how do we do that? Is there like a step-by-step guide to figuring out your values?
Well, Manson's not about giving you a one-size-fits-all answer, but he does talk about what makes for good values.
Wait, it must...
He says good values should be based in reality, got to be something you can actually achieve. They should be socially constructive, meaning they contribute to something larger than yourself. And they should be within your control, meaning you have the power to influence them through your own actions.
So, like, winning the lottery isn't a great value because so much of that is left up to chance.
Exactly. But something like being a more supportive friend or being a more present parent, those are things you can actually work towards.
Makes sense. So once we figure out our values, what then?
Well, here's where it gets interesting. And this might sound counterintuitive, but Manson argues that once you've chosen your values, you need to be willing to struggle for them. In fact, he even suggests that happiness itself requires struggle.
Wait, hold on. Struggle leads to happiness. How does that work?
Think about it. When you set a truly meaningful goal for yourself, something you deeply care about, the process of achieving that goal is rarely easy, right? There are going to be obstacles, setbacks, moments where you just want to give up. But it's pushing through those tough spots, that's where the growth happens. That's where the real satisfaction comes from.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. So it's about choosing the right struggles, the ones that actually mean something to us.
That's exactly it. He actually tells this crazy story about a Japanese soldier, Hiru Onoda. Onoda was stationed in the Philippines during World War II, and get this, he was so convinced that the war was still going on that he hid out in the jungle for almost 30 years after it ended.
Wait, seriously, 30 years. He was living in the jungle that whole time.
You see, Onoda, he refused to believe Japan had surrendered. He thought it was all a trick. He was totally committed to his version of reality, even though it was based on a misconception.
Wow. That's kind of tragic, actually. Like, talk about being stuck in a struggle.
And that's the thing, right? We can get so attached to our beliefs, to our struggles, even when they're no longer serving us. We hold on so tight to a certain narrative, even if it's causing us pain.
So how do we break free from that? How do we know when it's time to reevaluate our struggles? Maybe choose some new ones.
That's where self-awareness comes in. Manson says we need to be constantly questioning our beliefs, our assumptions, asking ourselves, are the things we're striving for truly important to us? Are they actually adding value to our lives?
So it's like taking a step back and saying, hey, is this thing I'm clinging to actually serving me?
Exactly. And you know what else he says? He says, you're wrong about everything, but so am I.
Hold up, wait. Is he saying we should just give up on believing in anything?
Not quite. It's more like He's acknowledging that all of us, we have biases, we have blind spots. Our beliefs, they're often based on incomplete information.
Okay, so it's more about being open to the possibility that we might not have all the answers.
Exactly. It's about approaching life with a bit of humility, being willing to say, hey, I might be wrong about this.
That's got to be tough for some people, though. Like admitting you're wrong, that can be a blow to the ego.
No doubt. But Manson's point is, it's in those moments of being wrong, that's where the real growth happens. It's when we let go of needing to be right all the time that we open ourselves up to new possibilities.
So if being wrong can actually be a good thing, how do we get better at, embracing those mistakes and using them to our advantage?
Well, he talks about changing our relationship with failure. Like instead of seeing failure as this horrible thing to be avoided at all costs, what if we saw it as an opportunity for growth?
It's like that saying, you learn more from your failures than from your successes.
Exactly. I mean, think about any successful person. They've all failed at some point, probably multiple times. But those failures, they taught them valuable lessons, right?
So it's not about avoiding failure altogether. It's about learning how to fail gracefully.
And more importantly, how to pick yourself back up and keep going. It's about resilience. Manson also talks about these immortality projects, these things we chase after, thinking they'll give our lives meaning, that they'll somehow allow us to cheat death.
Like building a legacy.
Exactly, leaving our mark on the world. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a difference. But Manson, he argues that these immortality projects, they can become a problem when we get so fixated on them that we forget to actually live our lives in the present moment.
So it's like we're so busy building our monument that we forget to enjoy the view from the top.
It's about finding that balance, striving for something meaningful but not letting it consume us. And you know what he suggests? He actually suggests we confront our fear of death head on.
Okay, now that's a bit intense. How do you just confront your fear of death?
It's not about becoming obsessed with death, right? It's about recognizing that our time on this planet is limited and seeing that realization as something that can actually free us.
Free us how?
When we accept that our time is finite, it can help us prioritize what's truly important. All of a sudden, that petty argument, that annoying coworker, it just doesn't seem as significant.
So it's about gaining perspective.
Exactly. It's about appreciating the preciousness of life and living each day with intention. So we've talked about choosing our struggles, confronting our mortality, but there's another crucial piece to this not giving effect puzzle.
And what's that?
Taking responsibility for our own emotions.
So we've talked about choosing our struggles and confronting our mortality.
Yeah.
But how does taking responsibility for our emotions actually play out in real life?
Well, it starts with recognizing that we always have a choice in how we react to things. Like you lose your job, you get passed over for a promotion. Yeah, those things are going to sting.
Nobody wants to feel those things, right? Disappointment, rejection. It's like our natural instinct is to avoid those feelings at all costs.
Of course. But Manson's saying it's not about denying those emotions. It's about taking ownership of them. It's about recognizing that you have the power to choose how you respond to those feelings.
So instead of letting those negative emotions spiral out of control, it's about finding ways to manage them, to channel them in a more productive direction.
Exactly. And he talks about how we get caught in these feedback loops. Our thoughts and our feelings, they start feeding off of each other, and it just creates this downward spiral.
Oh, yeah, those thought spirals, those can be dangerous.
Yes.
It's like you get stuck in your head replaying the same negative thoughts over and over.
Right. So you bomb that job interview and you start thinking, I'm such a loser, I'm never going to get my dream job. And those thoughts, they just make you feel worse, which then leads to more negative thinking, and it's like this vicious cycle.
So how do we break free from that cycle?
Manson says it's about focusing on what you can control. You can't control the fact that you got rejected, but you can control how you react to that rejection. You can choose to wallow in self-pity, or you can choose to learn from the experience and use it as motivation to improve.
So it's about shifting your focus from the problem to the solution.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. But that takes work, right? It's about changing those ingrained thought patterns.
Absolutely. It's not easy, but it's definitely possible. And one of the things Manson emphasizes is the importance of self-awareness, like taking the time to actually pay attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors.
So how do we do that? Like, how do you become more self-aware?
He suggests things like keeping a journal, meditation, mindfulness practices, anything that helps you to slow down and tune into your inner world.
Because we're so busy these days, right? It's like we're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation. It's easy to just go through life on autopilot, not really paying attention to what's going on inside of us.
Right. But it's in those quiet moments when we intentionally turn our attention inward. That's when we start to gain real self-awareness, and that's when we can start to make real changes in our lives. So much of this not giving effect philosophy, it really comes down to that,
Yeah.
Taking ownership of your thoughts, your emotions, your choices.
It's about being intentional with your life, deciding what truly matters to you, and then having the courage to go after it, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when it means facing those uncomfortable emotions head on.
Wow, so this has been quite the deep dive, and I've got to say, there's a lot to unpack here. This whole not giving effect thing, it's not as simple as it sounds.
Not at all. It's actually quite nuanced, and it's definitely not for everyone. But for those who are willing to put in the work, to challenge their assumptions, to embrace the messy and imperfect journey of life, it can be a really empowering philosophy.
Well said. So if you're out there feeling stuck, feeling overwhelmed, like you're just going through the motions, maybe it's time to take a page from Mark Manson's playbook. Ask yourself, what are you giving a feck about that you really shouldn't? And maybe more importantly, what are you not giving a feck about that you really should? That's something to think about. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep choosing what truly matters to you.